Have you ever been punished by nothing? No words, no yelling, just silence so loud it rattled your soul? Because here's the truth, the silent treatment isn't quiet. It screams. I remember it like it just happened. That night when I stood in front of someone I loved, someone I trusted, and watched their face harden into stone. The room was filled with things unsaid, so heavy I could feel my heart sink beneath the weight of it. I tried. I asked, softly at first, "What's wrong?" Nothing. No response. The air between us thickened. I tried again, my voice a little more desperate. "Please, can we talk?" But they wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak. It was as if I no longer existed, and in that moment, I felt my words die before they even left my mouth. What could I say that would break through? What could I do that wouldn't make it worse? So I said, what could I say that would break through? What could I do that wouldn't make it worse? I felt my body dying. That was when I slipped away. Not until the sun set and it was too dark. Then I slipped away. Hope would somehow keep us safe. What could I do that wouldn't make it? That night, I learned how silence can feel like violence. Not the kind that leaves bruises on the skin, but the kind that bruises your spirit. I went to bed feeling like I was invisible, like all the love and connection we'd built had evaporated into that awful, echoing quiet. What nobody tells you is that the silent treatment isn't passive, it's active. It's a choice someone makes to withhold not just words, but connection, validation, humanity, and it messes with you. It makes you doubt your reality. You replay every conversation, every look, every tiny thing you said, wondering what you did to deserve being erased. Our brains aren't wired to handle that kind of disconnection. There's research showing that when we experience rejection, especially through silence, our bodies respond the same way they do to physical pain. That knot in your stomach, that tightness in your chest, that aching behind your eyes, that's your nervous system screaming for safety, for belonging, for anything that feels like being seen. But here's the truth I wish I had known then. Their silence wasn't proof that I was unworthy. It wasn't evidence that I was too much or not enough. It was a mirror of their own inability to cope, to be vulnerable, to stay in the hard conversation. And I see it now for what it was. Not the end of my voice, but the beginning of me learning to honor it, even when no one else would. It didn't end with a fight. There was no dramatic goodbye, no final argument where we said things we couldn't take back. That's what made it so confusing. One day, we were laughing together, sharing secrets that felt like they belonged only to us. And then, the calls slowed. The messages went unanswered. The inside jokes became memories I carried alone. At first, I tried to explain it away. They're busy, life is just hectic. Maybe they're going through something. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the silence grew louder than any words could have been. I kept hoping I'd wake up to a message that said, "Sorry, I've been distant, let's catch up." But that message never came. What no one prepares you for is how much it hurts to lose someone without knowing why. When a friendship fades through silence, it feels like grieving a ghost. They're still out there in the world, living, breathing, but the part of them that you knew is gone. And you're left questioning not just what happened, but who you were to them. Was I really important? Did I matter as much as I thought? The hardest part was the way my mind filled in the blanks. Because when we don't have answers, our brains, wired for meaning making, will create their own story. And those stories are rarely kind. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I'm too much. Here's what psychology teaches us. Social rejection, even in subtle forms like ghosting or silent distancing, lights up the same part of the brain as physical pain. That ache in your chest, that hollow feeling in your gut, that's real. It's your body registering loss, even if no one else can see it. And what's cruel about this kind of silence is that it denies closure. You don't get the chance to fight for the friendship, to apologize if you need to understand what went wrong. You just get left with an emptiness that you have to figure out how to fill on your own. But here's the truth that eventually set me free. Their silence wasn't a reflection of my value. It wasn't proof that I wasn't worthy of loyalty or honesty. That it was about their limits, their fear, their inability maybe to have the hard conversations or hold space for complicated feelings. And when I finally let go of the need for their words, I found my own. I learned that real friendships don't just disappear into silence. Real connection stays even when things get hard, even when words are messy, even when vulnerability is uncomfortable. I wish I could tell you I've always been the one waiting on the other side of silence, but the truth? I've been the one who used silence as a shield, as a weapon, as a way to feel safe when I didn't have the courage or the language to deal with my own hurt. There was a time, more than once, when someone I loved would come to me, trying to talk through something painful, something raw. And instead of leaning in, instead of opening up, I'd shut down. I'd fold my arms, lower my gaze, and retreat into that fortress of quiet. I thought if I didn't say anything, I couldn't make it worse. I thought my silence would protect me from saying something I'd regret. But what I didn't see, what took me years to understand, was that my silence was just another form of distance, another way to avoid vulnerability. And while I thought I was keeping myself safe, what I was really doing was building a wall so high and thick that not even I could break through it. I've come to learn that we often use silence as armor when we're flooded, when our nervous system is overwhelmed, and words feel dangerous. That's what the science of emotional regulation tells us. Sometimes shutting down feels like the only way to cope. It's the body's way of saying, I can't process this right now, it's too much. But here's where it becomes a trap. What begins as a moment of self-protection can quickly become a habit of disconnection. And slowly, quietly, we train ourselves to run from the very thing that could heal us. The hard, messy, necessary conversation. I remember one night after another argument ended in my cold, punishing silence, sitting alone and realizing no one is coming over this wall. No one can. I'm alone because I put myself here. And that kind of loneliness, the one you create for yourself, is the heaviest kind of all. And what I've had to unlearn over and over is this: silence doesn't prevent pain, it just delays it. It makes the space between us wider, the hurt deeper, and the repair harder. Here's what I know now, and it's a truth I remind myself of every time I'm tempted to retreat. Silence isn't strength. Real strength is staying in the room. Real courage is letting yourself be seen, even when your voice shakes, even when your words come out messy. Because that's where connection lives. Not behind walls, but in the brave, imperfect middle of the hard stuff. There's a kind of silence that doesn't start in adulthood. It starts with the memory. It starts with addressing the hard stuff, putting something down that you couldn't formerly put down. It starts when we're small, when we're too young to name what's happening, but old enough to feel it. I know that silence because I lived it. I can see that little version of me, sitting at the dinner table, watching, waiting, trying to read the room. Was tonight going to be calm, Or was it going to be one of those nights? The nights when speaking up would only make things worse. The nights when asking a question or sharing a thought might bring that heavy, punishing quiet. So I learned to stay small. I learned to make myself invisible. I learned to quiet my voice, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I believed my words were dangerous. I thought that if I could just be good enough, quiet enough, careful enough, I could keep the peace. That's what the silent treatment teaches a child. Not just that love can be withdrawn without warning, but that connection is conditional. That belonging is earned through tiptoeing and shrinking. And that's not something we just outgrow. That kind of silence gets woven into who we become. We carry it into adulthood. We enter relationships bracing for the day the warmth will be replaced with cold. We become people who hesitate to speak our truth, afraid of what our honesty might cost us. Or we become the ones who disappear emotionally when things get hard. Because that's what we learned, that silence keeps you safe. Psychologists talk about this as a survival adaptation. It's called fawning or appeasement. When a child tries to avoid emotional harm by becoming what the situation demands, even if that means losing themselves, it works in the short term. But the long-term cost? Disconnection from our own voice. I remember the first time I realized how deep that silence ran in me. Someone I loved asked, "What do you really want? What do you really feel?" And I opened my mouth to answer, but I didn't know. I had spent so long trying to be what others needed that I'd lost touch with what I needed. And here's the truth that breaks my heart and heals it at the same time. We are not meant to earn love through silence. Real love, healthy love, doesn't require us to disappear. It invites us to speak, to be seen, to take up space, even when our truth is messy or inconvenient or loud. That scared child we once were, they were doing their best to survive. But the adult we are now, we deserve more. We deserve connection that doesn't ask us to vanish to keep it. We deserve to unlearn the silence and to reclaim our voice, one brave word at a time. There's a moment, and if you've been there, you know it, where you stand at the edge of that chasm of silence, heart pounding, hands maybe shaking, and you have a choice. You can stay quiet, you can let the distance grow, let the wall stand, let the ache of what's unsaid keep hollowing you out, or you can open your mouth and speak. Even if your voice trembles, even if you're terrified of what will come next. I remember one of those moments like it's burned into me. I had been caught in that spiral, you know the one, where every day the silence feels heavier, every glance is more awkward, every chance to speak passes by until you don't even know how to start anymore. And finally, one night, I couldn't take it. The weight of it felt bigger than my fear. So I picked up the phone, and before I could lose my nerve, I said it. I don't want this distance between us. I don't want this silence. Can we talk? And let me tell you, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. My chest was tight, my mind was racing with what ifs. What if they're angry? What if they don't care? What if I make it worse? But here's what happened. On the other end of that call, the other person exhaled, like they'd been holding their breath too. And we talked. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and hard and vulnerable, but it was real. Breaking the silence doesn't always mean everything gets fixed. It doesn't guarantee that the other person will meet you in that brave space. Sometimes they can't. Sometimes they won't. But breaking the silence is about you, about choosing connection over control, about choosing truth over comfort, about choosing to show up even when it would be easier to hide. What we know from the science of relationships is this: silence breeds assumptions, and assumptions breed disconnection. Vulnerability, the willingness to show up and be seen, even imperfectly, is what bridges that gap. It's what lets healing in. I won't pretend it's easy. It's not. Speaking into silence is terrifying, especially when silence has become a habit or a defense or a place where you've hidden for years. But every time we choose to break that silence, we chip away at the walls that keep us lonely. We create space for understanding. We offer a hand where there was once only distance. And that's the quiet, beautiful, messy courage of it all. Speaking even when silence feels safer. Because that's how we build the kind of connections that last, not through perfection, not through always saying the right thing, but through the raw, imperfect human choice to try. And here's the truth I carry with me now. Silence might feel like safety, but it's connection that sets us free. If you're caught in the storm of silence right now, whether you're giving it or receiving it, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this silence protecting me, or is it keeping me alone? Because your words matter, your voice matters, and so do you.